Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. It's Wednesday, March 26th, 2025. This is episode 345, and we're going to talk about KongTzu and LaoTzu, two Chinese philosophers. And I promise this is the last episode where I'll do a tale of two, whatever, whatever. Um, so there is a saying, and apparently Tom Woods started it, but no matter who you vote for, you get John McCain. And so the events and the news of the day is pretty disappointing, really, with the whole signal debacle. Was it deliberate? Was it accidental? Do the people in positions of power so casually disregard the lives of other people? I mean, it's disgusting, really. It's disappointing. And I really don't want to talk about it, right? Or to basically put in another way, people always vote for peace and freedom, but you get authoritarians and ever less freedom. So I thought I'd do a tangential kind of topic to different Chinese philosophers who were more or less kind of contemporaries, at least from this perspective. They both lived kind of around the same time, if they were even real people. So we're going to talk about Confucius, or KongTzu, as they say in Korea, or Gongja is what they would say in Korea, and KongTzu, I guess, is the way you would say it in Chinese, and LaoTzu, uh, and I forget what we say it in, how we say it in Korean, but anyway, but I just wanted to keep the title. The "zi" is like sir, it's a title. Master, it's not their last name, so they're not brothers. So I just wanted to have that kind of parallelism. So I used that instead of Confucius. But I'll use Confucius during the episode. So Confucius lived about 2,500 years ago. His philosophy these days has become a religion. Some people will call it ethics or moral code. But in my subjectivity, the way that I define religion, it's just that it's a system of belief, something that you use to help you make choices and decisions in life. So, yeah, sure, Confucianism can be a religion. Anything can be a religion. Heck, people use NFL football as their religion. Whatever. There is no, what do you call it, arrogance in my definition, where people can sort of create division and separation, marginalization, right? And so, all inclusive, anything can be a religion. All right. So, a lot of Asian countries are influenced by Confucius. And Asian society, and when I say Asian society, it's Asia in general, but mostly China, Japan, and Korea. But I'm sure there are other areas that are heavily influenced by Confucian thinking. And Confucius, and there's a reason for it, okay? Because there's a lot of hierarchy within Confucianism, and it appeals to people, societies where hierarchy empowers certain people and permanently disempowers others. But within Confucius thought, there's an emphasis on good moral character through this idea of humanity. And I'll dispense with the Chinese words, but basically, it's good character through being human, right? So if a ruler has moral perfection, his rule will be peaceful and benevolent. And so to achieve this, his education is really important. Oh, by the way, I'm getting this summary information from National Geographic Encyclopedia entry about Confucianism. The word Confucianism, by the way, doesn't exist in the Asian language. That was a creation of the Jesuits. Uh, when they went to Asia and encountered it, they gave it the name, or they created the name Confucianism, right? So for the longest time, I could never really communicate to people that I was asking questions about Confucianism, and then they would say, "Oh, you mean KongTzu?" And I was like, "I guess so." So education is really important, and this is why a lot of people, if you ever wondered why Asians are just study bugs when they come to the West, because all of Asian society is about education. You got to take tests to be able to advance in society, to be able to qualify for certain jobs, right? So in Korea, to be able to get licensing for certain jobs, and I think there are five what they call goshis, or one might equate it to a bar exam. But it's not just for law, it's for medicine, it's for accounting, it's for a couple of other things. And very, very difficult. The competition is just absolutely insane. And suicide is not uncommon. Well, anyway, so studying is everything in Asian society. And so obviously people who study really, really well, people who have photographic memory, they do a lot better than people who don't have those abilities. All right. And so testing is huge. And so you go from an environment where everyone is optimized for studying, come to America, man, everything is a joke. Unfortunately, I was born in America, so I struggled. Anyway, so you got filial piety or devotion to family. Uh, that's where you get ancestor worship, but also respect to elders. So family is the basic social unit of society, as opposed to the individual that we have here in the United States, right? And so Taoism might even, and we're going to talk about Taoism in a bit, but Taoism may even focus more on the individual. But in Confucianism, the family unit is uh, is the foundation. Confucius himself said that he does not he's not creating all of these rules, but rather he is teaching the tradition. He wanted to preserve the tradition, and then he's a lot like Socrates. His students then wrote down a lot of the stuff that he taught. Um, so his teaching also included stratification, right? I mentioned that hierarchy. There are four classes: nobles, scholars, farmers, and merchants are on the bottom. And obviously, merchants are on the bottom because luxury is not so desirable. Just like in the West, being too rich is not a good thing. But they just stuck the merchants all the way at the bottom of society as a result, which is funny because they usually have the most amount of money and scholars have the least, right? But anyway, women weren't even in these four classes, and they were even below merchants, which is why you'll see a lot of Asian women um, you know, sort of gravitating or dumping Asian society and cultural values because they were often treated very, very poorly in those kinds of societies. I've talked about the supposed uh, meekness of Asian women in another episode, but just in summary, it's the grammar. It's the grammar of the language, which make women appear to be very submissive, right? It's just the grammar. Women are still women, no matter where you go, and they are not meek, all right? Especially after marriage, if you know what I'm saying. So this philosophy of Confucianism becomes a dominant philosophy in Asia, primarily because of the hierarchy that it enables, that it protects, it perpetuates. And then in this National Geographic article, it says that current Chinese government recognizes that Confucianism is aligned with its socialist goals. For example, Confucian ideas regarding the hierarchy of society and concept of social responsibility fit with socialist communal values and strict government and societal structure. And a lot of socialists right? Or communists are confused by that, but they're like, no, we're all equal. No, if you read the Communist Manifesto very, very closely, well, not even that closely, if you just read it, you'll see that, there are all the workers, but who's controlling all the workers? Well, that would be the communists, right? That would be the government. And so that's where you see the reintroduction of some sort of power structure hierarchy, which is why it's just kind of amusing to me whenever I hear communists or socialists talk because they ignore the obvious, right? They ignore that a lot of people who are proponents of socialism dream of being one of the rulers, not the ruled. Anyway, Confucianism also has five relationships which are foundational to understand the greater hierarchy, and that would be the relationship between ruler and subject, father and son, not moms and daughters. No, remember they're women, husband and wife, elder brother, and then younger brother, friend and friend. And you can see this in the language. If you speak, at least I don't know, if you speak Korean, you'll see this, right? So when you're talking to the king or God, the language that you use is very specific and particular for that relationship. And then father and son, of course, you have to be extremely respectful. And the language that you use is different. Husband and wife, yet again. Elder brother and younger brother, very similar to father, son, husband and wife. And then friend and friend, where you treat each other as equals because you're the same age. So one person doesn't have an edge on the other. So that's that. Confucianism, very hierarchical, very structured, yet uh, they're supposed to practice humanity within it. So you're not supposed to abuse your rank, your status in society. You must have humanity. And, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. I remember my father when he would tell stories. And, Confucian values, very, very important, but they took a back seat when it comes to Christian teaching, right? But he told me stories which made me realize that, oh, to be wise and to have that human aspect allows you to be able to see when the traditional understanding of who is more superior than the other doesn't work. And so you have to yield in those situations. But that, of course, takes wisdom to do. And my father told me a story when his father arranged a marriage for him. And that was something my father was not interested in at the time because he said, I got to get to America and get a PhD. And so he rejected the idea of marriage so much so, but he couldn't say it. So instead, what he did was he threw the dinner table, onto the ground. And if you know anything about Korean country houses, right, it was a big deal. But my grandfather, who I never met, my grandfather just said, okay, calm down. I won't make you marry her, which is like unheard of. You don't, you know what I mean? That's not something that most families you'd be able to get away with. And so, for that reason, my family, my grandfather, my father, and myself, are more sort of flexible. Like we understand the principle that's trying to be conveyed. We try to preserve that yet we are flexible and try to adapt to the times. Okay, so the rough contemporary of Confucius was LaoTzu, right? Or LaoTzu, as Americans might say it. But there's a lot of question as to whether or not he was a real person or a mythic person. I did talk about him, I believe, in episode 69. I did an episode on on the Tao Te Ching or Taoism, but I want to talk about Taoism or Lao-Tzu in contrast to Confucius, right? So you got this strict authoritarian, rigid structure that comes from Confucius, and then you got Lao-Tzu, right? Or Lao-Tzu, where he has concepts like Wu Wei, that's actionless action. What? Right? How can you have action that has no action? Right? So that's the kind of stuff that comes up in the Tao Te Ching. Feng Shui or Feng Shui, however people are pronouncing it, go with the flow, right? That concept comes out of Taoism, Tao Te Ching. So in other words, what does that mean? It means that that life is, oh, the best way to explain it is life is like water coming down the mountain. It's going to get to the bottom of the mountain no matter what. You might want to try to dam it up, try to divert it, try to somehow block the movement of the river, but eventually the water will overwhelm whatever it is that you're doing, and it's going to get to the bottom of the mountain, right? Another way of looking at this actionless action, go with the flow, is if you are floating down the river on a tube, right? So you're tubing down the river, but you're just floating down the river. So you are going to go where you want to go. Now, here's the question that is kind of unclear. You trying to paddle your little, tube to go in a different direction or go someplace else. You're like, oh, I want to go there. And you start paddling. Well, so are you going with the flow or are you fighting against the flow? Or that is to say, are you fighting against the rules of life? You may recall yesterday's episode, Warren G. Harding basically made reference to the fact that, hey, you can't, well, in summary, it's basically, you can't fight Mother Nature, right? The world is going to do what it's going to do, and it's going to balance out eventually. So you can do what you want to fight it, but it's a losing cause, right? It's going to happen. And so all of us too, we're floating down the river. You might think that you are going with the flow, but you're actually paddling in the opposite direction. And see, that's the thing. That's what you have to figure out. Are you actually going with the flow? Are the desires, the actions, the choices that you make, is it going with the flow or are you fighting against the flow? Right. And so you have to figure out the way life should be lived and don't fight it. And that's the thing. Because of our miseducation or misinformation, sometimes we can have that backwards. So here are a couple excerpts to sort of emphasize the fact that unlike Confucianism, Taoism is very free form. So here's an excerpt from chapter 18. I'm hoping that I didn't pick the same ones I did in episode 69, but anyway. When the great Tao declines, virtue of humanity and righteousness shall arise. When knowledge and intelligence appear, great hypocrisy shall arise. When a country is in chaos, the loyal officials shall appear. And I thought that was kind of funny because if you think about it, when it says when the Tao, right, when the way, when people forget the flow and they start fighting against it, now you're going to see this idea of humanity and righteousness, right? So people are going to declare what is the flow, and so everyone has to follow that flow, right? They are going to declare what is righteous. Whether it is or isn't, no one really seems to care. It's just someone said, hey, this is righteous, so we're all going to do it. And then when knowledge and intelligence appear, that's when you'll see great hypocrisy, which basically means that the knowledge and intelligence that people claim to have is not. And that's why everything is hypocritical. And then finally, when a country is in chaos, that's when you're going to see loyal officials, right? So in other words, the country is falling apart. And you might be tempted to interpret this positively and say, here comes the loyal officials to save the day. But remember, this is Taoism, and there's a flow. What do loyal officials do? They corrupt the system and twist it to make it go their way, just like Doge is exposing all these so-called loyal politicians, honest politicians, twisting the system, corrupting the system to enrich themselves. Right. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Here's chapter 30. The principle of the Tao will not use the force of arms to conquer the world, for such affairs will result in cause and effect. In other words, horrible outcomes. Right. And so the Tao basically you don't use force, you go with the flow. Chapter 61, a great nation rules by placing itself in a lowly position, like the ocean, small, Small and great nation, excuse me, placing itself in a lowly position, like the ocean, right? The ocean is where all the water goes. And so what does that mean? Well, to serve others. And you might say, well, I don't get it. So we're supposed to be slaves? No. Think about how the free market operates. You try to create a product that other people want to buy. In other words, by producing something that other people want, you are serving them. And so a great nation is a nation that produces, makes and produces, therefore turns into great wealth. And if you're trading with everyone, you're also fostering peace. So instead of just giving people paper for their products and then declaring war on the countries that don't want to play with you, you're going to serve. You're going to put yourself in a lowly position. Chapter 68, faithful Tao cultivator does not use force, once again. A good warrior does not lose his temper. A conqueror does not challenge others. The virtue of peace with no contention, right? And so you're going with the flow. You're not like saying, you're taking advantage of us, you're ripping us off. No, you're just like, oh, okay, well, so be it. And you find an alternative. Chapter 72. If you don't respect authority, there will be misfortune. Don't interfere with the livelihood of others or despise their living. So one must question, what is the authority, right? Well, the Tao is the authority, and so if you don't respect the Tao, there's going to be misfortune, right? And don't despise other people's living that they've decided to take for themselves to make money to support their family, and don't interfere with them. Well, that's everything. That's what government does. It interferes with our lives. And you can see that this is complete opposite of what Confucianism is advocating for, right? Oh, you must be supreme ruler, but do it with humanity, right? It's total opposite direction. Chapter 75, people starve because people are taxed too heavily. When people govern with desire, they write too many laws. People take death lightly because of taxation, right? So when a government just goes out of whack, just goes haywire with the authoritarianism, people take death lightly. What does that mean? That's when you have rebellion, right? And people who engage in rebellion, if they lose, of course, they're all put to death. But who cares? You're starving, you're oppressed, you're going to fight, you're going to fight it, right? And it just, I thought of doing this episode primarily because of global events. You have so many governments following this Confucian idea of, well, we just have to rule the people right. We just have to control everyone in the way that will make everything perfect and peaceful. No, that never happens. And so this tension between the desire to control, the desire to rule versus letting people be free, I think this is a characteristic of human life, of human society, right? You have people who are control freaks, and then other people who just want to be left alone. And of course, I'm on the side of freedom. I'm on the side of the individual, uh, you know, as far as everyone, right? But unfortunately, a lot of people are sort of thumbing their nose at authority. They're pushing against the way. And so now we have a tremendous amount of chaos. And hopefully, more and more people realize what's going on and start either voting differently, although I know a lot of anarcho-capitalists will say, you don't vote your way out of oppression. Yeah, I get it. But what else can we do unless we're praying for economic collapse and then which allows for a big reset. But I don't know, but just I just know that there is the way, and we are going to revert to the mean. All of the evil, all of the bad choices, bad practice, malfeasance, corruption, all of that will get exposed and will be cleared out, and then we start all over again. Hopefully, it won't be so bad as it sounds, and I will talk to you next time.